for?
For me?
Can you start?
Morning.
You know, we haven't seen much beside the trailer, so can you introduce us to the show? Because the panel will be later, so we like seen some snippets.
Yes. I know the most recent trailer really places a lot of emphasis on women joining NASA, and it's certainly a huge part of the knock-on effect of the alternate history premise. We get to see in more detail why as the show goes on, but if Russia got to put a man on the moon first, maybe America could put a woman on the moon first, kind of idea to compete. But the show is, of course, that is one really wonderful aspect of it, but it's got a lot more going on. It's basically this amazing ensemble story where we get to fall in love and get to know each of, I think there's probably like 10 or so characters that have wonderful individual storylines. Basically we're looking at an America that's been changed by the fact that Russia swooped in and took something from America thought was theirs, that they thought they had in the bag, let's say anyway, and how what the ripple effect of that is. And does that necessarily mean that bad things happen because of that? Perhaps could there be social progress that happens because things like bringing women into NASA earlier happens, things like the first woman in mission control happens, and perhaps that a dystopian future isn't necessarily like, it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with this alternate history premise. We get to, it's a lot like a period show more than anything else, you know.
I don't think I can add anything.
So how do your characters play into that?
I would say that for Margo, her experience in 1969 probably doesn't vacillate all that much from any other woman who's trying to find a place within NASA's mission control. She very much feels locked out or on the fringes of where she would like to be. So when you first meet her, she's somebody who's in the backup room, who's supporting flight controllers that are assigned to kind of very specific pieces of the mission. But she would very much really like to be kind of like sitting in one of those chairs. And even though she's maybe more qualified than some other people, she's just not being given that shot simply because she's a woman. And I really don't think that varies all that much from our American history. I mean, that was before Title X. It was before people were starting to really like understand that women really were, being kind of pushed aside. So I feel like it's kind of in line with that. I mean, there was an article in the New York Times, I think last year, about women learning to code early on, and it was because men didn't want to do it. So women actually had opportunities to do it. I think there are a lot of parallels, and I feel like it's a while before our story really diverges. And I can't really tell you anymore.
That was good.
Is there something that you read when you were reading this that really drew you to this project, or that you were like, something that stood out?
What do you mean, something in the script?
Something that stood out that made you say, I want to take this project on?
It kind of has evolved. I mean, just there's one scene in the first episode, which is one of my favorite scenes in the whole season. And, Margo's in that backup room, and she knows the answer to something, and somebody outside is totally dropping the ball. And if it was just okay for her to step in and say, like, this is what you need, then everything would be fine. And she both can't do it, and at the same time can't keep her mouth shut, and so kind of like juggling those balls, and then also trying to understand all of like the technical language and understand what part of the rocket she's talking about, what computer she's talking about, why it matters. I don't know, for me that's just like candy. As a nerd and an actor, I'm just like, ooh, look at all this stuff, and I gotta figure out what this acronym means, and what is this, and why is she talking about this, and I don't know.
The writing is also just so good. The scripts were so undeniably good when they came in, and I think it's always fun as an actor. I think Wrenn and I have this in common, when you have to take a giant leap to be able to play that character. It demands research, it demands knowledge acquisition. It's nothing like the world she and I walk in day out. And that, the corny analogy is that, you know, we talk about walking in someone else's shoes and so much of that is acting. And when the shoes physically are from like 1969 and everything that comes along with that, it's just such a rich experience to get to time travel in a way. Yeah.
What was your favourite thing about the alternate timeline, so the divergence from history?
I mean, it's hard not to love the notion that, in fact, the fact that Russia gets to the moon first ends up aiding social progress, specifically in America, and then that ripples out into the rest of the world. You know, specifically for my character, we as women come into NASA more than a decade before women actually were first invited to join the astronaut program. And, you know, that's one symbolic thing that is rippled out throughout the rest of it. I think I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. There are certain totems of social progress that happen sooner in our story because of this supposedly bad thing that happens. You know, I just thought that was such an interesting way to look at it.
I also kind of love the fact that to me, our show is a little bit like everybody knows Romeo and Juliet, and you know what's happening, and I feel like people know enough about the space race to know just enough to not know when the show's going to surprise them by taking like a left turn or right turn. So, you know, that familiarity, I think, actually can create a lot of suspense, because at any moment something goes slightly differently that can then, as the ripple, you know, like moves out, it affects so much.
You guys have both done direct research between like Boardwalk Empire and The Crown. So how does this compare? Is it very different because it is an alternate, you know, history type of story?
You know, I always describe the show as a period show.
Yeah.
It's never felt like we're in an I know, of course, it is by the mere fact of its premise, but it's so the things we mess with, other than Russia getting to the moon first, which is obviously an enormous thing, it's so subtle, and as Wrenn spoke to, it's like really builds a very familiar world. So for me, it's felt like doing a period show, truly. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.